welcome to another tutorial video. Today I am going to be explaining in detail how and what it means to play a card. What does it mean to play a card? When can I play a card? How do I play a card? A key component of any card game, and Flesh and Blood is no different, is playing cards. This can mean playing cards to attack with, to react with, or as an instant in response to something happening. The biggest thing to know is that only the player with priority can play cards. Refer to my video on priority to see at what time you may get priority if you are unsure. I will go into a bit of detail on what cards can be played at what time throughout this video. Before we can play a card, however, we must understand the process of playing a card, the how of it, if you will. When playing a card, you must follow this sequence as outlined in the comprehensive rules. First, you announce the card you are going to play. Make sure you are going to play the card fully and that you are able to pay all costs involved, or else you may fail to play the card and the game state will revert to before you announce, which in a tournament setting will give your opponent information that you might not have wanted them to have. To announce a card, simply declare the card you are going to play. Essentially say the name of the card you are playing and set it down in the chain zone of the arena. If the card has a variable cost, you may also declare that value. A variable cost is a card with X in the cost. For example, this Sonata Arcanix is 2X. So when you play Sonata Arcanix, that means you declare the value of X, which can be any number you choose. Just be sure that you are able to pay for it. So for this example, I'm just going to say a Sonata Arcanix value of X equals 1, which means the cost is going to be 2 because 2X. Then if there are any additional optional costs, say that those costs will be paid. An example of an optional cost is Shadow of Ursur. As an additional cost to play Shadow of Ursur, you may banish a card with Blood Debt from your hand. If you do, Shadow of Ursur gains Go Again. Note that when something says may, it means it is optional and must be chosen at this time, or else the opportunity will be missed. Next, choose the modes if there are any. Modes are when a card says to choose a number of options that are listed with bullet points on the card. For example, Art of War. Then, if the card will have a target, choose the target. The most common example of this are attack action cards, which when played, most often will target the opposing hero, but may also target an enemy, ally, or Spectra card. So here's an ally and a Spectra card, such as Ode to Wrath. Now we determine the resource cost. Declare if there is an alternate cost being paid. For example, Soul Reaping lets you banish cards from your hand rather than paying its resource cost. I'm going to take a step back on this one since some people had questions about this. So if I announce Soul Reaping and declare its alternate cost to be played, so I may banish a card. So now its alternate cost is banish a card and 0 resources effectively. So keep that in mind. Now apply effects that will increase the resource cost, such as Hamstring Shot. Effect from being hit on your opponent's turn. So if opponent hit me on their turn, now my cost is going to be increased by 1. So if I am trying to play Soul Reaping, I announced it, I declared its value was going to be banishing a card as its optional cost. So its resource cost is 0, however I was hit with Hamstring Shot, now the resource cost is 1. Then apply effects that will decrease the resource cost, such as a Bloodsheath Skeleta or Arknight Ascendancy, which both have the effect of reducing costs by the number of rune chants you control. So if I were to use a Bloodsheath Skeleta, I'll put a graphic up here of one, and used it, and then declared Soul Reaping, it would then take that Hamstring Shot's 1 resource cost and reduce it by 1 because I have a rune chant. So you see how that works? Keep in mind that effects that increase or decrease resource cost do stack. So if you are hit with multiple Hamstring Shots, the cost increase will be additive. Or if you activate Bloodsheath Skeleta and play Arknight Ascendancy, the cost reduction will apply from both card effects. Once you have the total resource cost, now we can pay for the card. The game state will first look at your resource pool to see if you have any floating resources. If you have enough resources, it will spend those to pay the cost. If you do not have enough resources, then it is time to pitch cards from your hand one at a time until there are enough resources to pay for the card. One common question here is if you have to pitch the full amount possible right away. The answer to this is no. You can pitch cards in whatever order you wish. So if you have a 3-cost card and you have a red and blue pitch card in hand, you can absolutely pitch the red card first for 1 resource, and then pitch the blue card for the rest, resulting in 1 extra floating resource. There are many reasons to want to do this, whether it's to remove undesired cards from your hand or to meet requirements of cards in the pitch zone. For certain card abilities, such as the Great Library of Solana, which requires 2 yellow cards in your pitch zone. Now pay non-resource costs, which may consist of charging your soul, discarding a card at random, revealing a card, or something else as indicated on the card. Finally, if you are playing an action card, you will spend 1 action point. Non-attack action and attack action cards are both considered action cards. Keep this in mind and remember, as stated at the start of this video, action cards can only be played to layer 1 of the chain. If at any time during this process a cost could not be played, then the card cannot be played, and you must reverse the game state to before you announced the card. Now that we know the fundamental steps of playing a card, let's look at what kind of cards can be played and when they can be played. Do you remember that cards can only be played when you have priority, and action cards can only be played by the turn player? Now, aside from action cards and attack action cards, which can only be played by the turn player when they have priority and only to layer 1 of the chain, the most common card to be played outside of combat is an instant card. Instant cards can be played by any player when they have priority. Remember, if you are unsure when you get priority, refer to my video on priority sequences. After instants are reaction cards. Reaction cards can be either an attack reaction or a defense reaction, and can only be played during the reaction step when you have priority, but these are a little different. Only the attacking player can play attack reactions during the reaction step when they have priority. Only the defending player can play defense reactions during the reaction step when they have priority. Playing an attack reaction or a defense reaction is not determinant on whether or not either player has played an attack or defense reaction. If the turn player does not play an attack reaction, the defending player can still play a defense reaction and vice versa. And if the turn player doesn't play a reaction, but the defending player does, the turn player can still then choose to play a reaction if they wish. This little game of cat and mouse can go back and forth for as long as either player is playing cards, for as long as there are layers resolving, until both players choose to pass priority in succession on layer 1 of the combat chain. I will discuss in detail the intricacies of combat in a future video. This covers what you need to know to understand how to play cards. A few extra tidbits of information. Not all cards can be played like this. Some cards, like Mentors, can only be activated under certain conditions. The best way to understand them is to read the card itself. If it doesn't say action, reaction, or instant at the bottom, then there may be special conditions to play or use it. Not all cards can be pitched. If the card doesn't have a pitch value, such as Gorganian Tomb, Mentors, or Great Library of Solana, then it cannot be pitched, not even for 0 resources. Pay attention to the card's subtype and supertype. Action item is still an action card. And above all, remember that you can play cards anytime you have priority. And only the turn player can play action cards when they have priority to layer 1 of the chain. So I hope that explains how to play a card. Thank you for watching, and look forward to my next tutorial video